Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Millennial Magician Archive. I am your host, Phoenix Coffin-Williams, and today I'm coming to you from the beautiful Forest Lawn Cemetery here in Buffalo, New York. Forest Lawn Cemetery is a place of power for me, and so I do a lot of working in here. And also, as a result, a bunch of the things that I broadcast to you for this series will take place in this cemetery. Forest Lawn Cemetery is located in Buffalo, New York, which is in Erie County, and it houses a great deal of famous spirits, people who have done great things with their lives. Right now, at the time of filming, it is September 6th, 2022, which means we are gradually moving along in the wheel of the year towards Mabon and towards Samhain after that. And so I thought that this would be a great time to start to do some work and do some teaching and do some exploration about spirits, and particular spirits of the dead. So this episode is specifically about working in the graveyard. When it comes to working in the graveyard, there are some things that need to be considered so that it can be done effectively and safely, depending on your spiritual orientation. So first and foremost, it's important to understand, it's important to recognize, and it's important to acknowledge the role of the cemetery in the work of a successful witch, of an effective witch. Working with spirits of the dead and, utilizing necromantic magic is something that is innate to the power of witches, and I personally think that it is beneficial to celebrate it as often as possible, and especially when it's needed. So I'm coming to you from a place of necromantic magic. Working in the cemetery, working with spirits of the dead is an innate power of the witch, and it's something that we can all benefit from doing and enriching our personal spiritual practices. And then also, if we do work for other people, because people do still consult witches and spiritual directors for help in life. So if you are the kind of person who works for clients and who does consultations, using the cemetery for work is absolutely an essential component of effective magic and consultations. With that being said, there are some tools, there are some tricks, there are some techniques, there are some practices that are absolutely essential for us to be doing to make sure that we are doing this work to the best possible outcome. And depending on what you believe about the cemetery, depending on what you believe about spirits of the dead, absolutely impact your experience with this work. So, first and foremost, one of the things that I want to go over is the proper way to enter a cemetery when you are engaging in necromantic magics. So this could be collecting graveyard dirt. This could be honoring a specific spirit or ancestor. This could be doing any kind of magic or spell casting that has to happen in the gates of the cemetery, right? There are ways to enter the cemetery to make sure that you get off on the correct foot. Understand that once you enter the gates of the cemetery, you are entering the realm of the dead, right? They own what goes on in there. They own the sky above a cemetery. They own the dirt that they are buried in. If there's some water that passes through the cemetery, that is theirs. And so you want to make sure that you are entering with the appropriate level of respect, with the appropriate level of reverence. Also, if you have relatives in the cemetery, all the better. So rely on your ancestors to help with the protection, to help with the energetic attunements, and to help with the directions that are needed to do successful graveyard work. And once you get good at it, once you get comfortable with it, once you come to recognize how you feel when you feel on and how you feel when you feel off when you're doing graveyard work, then it is a good time to explore into other cemeteries where you might not have relatives. So definitely start with your ancestors first. Definitely start with honoring them. Definitely start with paying offerings to them. Definitely, consider saying thank you to them at your meals when you're not doing graveyard work. All that kind of thing. Really get them in your life and get them on your side, especially as you move forward with this work. 2, approach even the outermost gate of the cemetery with reverence and with respect. Acknowledge the gatekeeper of the cemetery. Pay an offering to the gatekeeper of the cemetery. Ask their permission and get them on your side before you enter to do your work. So that's going to be the first thing that I demonstrate to y'all. When it comes to taking your first steps into the graveyard, into the cemetery, to do any kind of magic or working whatsoever, like I said, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you get the gatekeeper on your side. You can do this a bunch of ways. The way that I do it comes from the African American hoodoo and conjure perspective. And you make offerings of coin, you make offerings of rum, you make offerings of tobacco to the gatekeeper, you knock on the gate a few times, and you do your thing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be offering some coins, and I'm actually going to be offering some sprays of Florida water. And in this case, odd numbers are the way to go. So I'm going to be offering 3 pennies, 3 nickels, and 3 dimes. I'm going to be offering 3 sprays of Florida water. And I'm also going to knock on the gate 3 times. So you knock on the gate, you place your offering down. Spray the Florida water. 3 sprays. And then at that point, you would address your prayer. If you're using rum, if you're using vodka, if you're using some kind of liquor, you can spray it out of your mouth, or you can dump it if you don't know how to do it. But here you would offer a prayer to the gatekeeper. I do call on you, O gatekeeper of the cemetery, guardian of this threshold. I call upon you to descend upon me and be my guide. I ask for your permission, I ask for your blessing to enter this place and to do my sacred working. Please accept the offerings that I make here unto you for the success of my work and to uphold the sanctity of our relationship. I do pray this earnestly from my heart, so mote it be. And then you wait for that feeling to fall upon you. You wait for that message to come to you about whether or not it is appropriate for you to enter and do your work at this time. If it's affirmative, you go ahead in and do what you gotta do. If it's not affirmative, you pack up and you come back later. You of course leave the offering. You don't take your rum back, you don't take your tobacco back, you don't take your coins back. You leave them there. Thank you for the consideration, and then you come back another day. The reason why it's important to listen for this message or wait for the affirmation is because perhaps your ancestors aren't fully in line with what's going on, and you might need to tweak either your spell work, you might need to tweak your intention, you might need to pay better attention to your life circumstances before you do this work. Perhaps there is something energetically that's happening inside the cemetery, and it's not appropriate for you at this time, for your own safety or for your own perspective, for you to be doing what you're doing. Perhaps the gatekeeper is not in the mood to entertain any human workers at the moment because there's some other spiritual stuff going on. Whatever, you know, a lot of the times it is up to your perspective to why you might interpret the no, or how you might interpret the no or the yes. So for example, if you believe that it's possible for the guardian to be busy with other things, then that might be a reason for a no. If you believe that the guardian ultimately has say over what happens in the cemetery and is for whatever reason calling you to wait because you need to learn patience as, you know, your own spirit lesson, then that might be the case. If you believe that your ancestors are your spiritual gatekeepers and it's their job to keep unhelpful things out or unwanted things out and away from you, then that might be a reason that you perceive a no. So all those things come into play at this moment, but it is absolutely important to respect if you get a no, wait, come back later, maybe do some divination about what needs to happen in order for you to get a yes, and come back at a different time. However, if the answer is yes, it's yes, and you proceed. You do what you gotta do. Once you have successfully gained entrance into the cemetery, once you have successfully gotten the gatekeeper, the guardian at the gate, the watcher at the gate, however your tradition refers to the one who keeps, you know, the cemetery gates intact, and reinforces those boundaries that separate, you know, the realm of the dead and the realm of the living. Once you have gotten their blessing, once you have secured, you know, them being on your side, it's important to spend a decent amount of time in the cemetery before you even start doing your work. So this could be a several week, a several month, a several day process. Don't rush it. But it's important to spend some time walking through the cemetery, taking a look at, you know, some of the symbols that are engraved onto the headstones, taking a look at some of the historical monuments that might be inside the cemetery, taking a look at the way that, you know, the people choose to recognize and remember the folks who were buried here. If you are in a cemetery that is established for public use or private use, it's important to know that because it can impact, you know, what you do in there or what kinds of work you do in there or how you go about doing it. But it also gives you a quick history lesson, gives you some knowledge about the place that you are dealing with and about the energy that's incorporated in there. Go to some of the oldest parts of the cemetery and take a look at some of the dates. Cemeteries that have been established for public use might also bear the same date or be established somewhere near the time that the city that you are in or the village that you are in was established in. And knowing about some of the history that was going on, some of the stuff that the area was going through when the cemetery was established will be helpful for you to know. And it'll help you calibrate how you use the place of power. It'll help you calibrate how you use your graveyard dirt. It'll help you calibrate maybe what kinds of pacts you make with the spirits, or it might help you calibrate what you hire a specific spirit to do. So spend some time walking in between the gravestones, spend some time walking through some of the paths that are there, spend some time, maybe do some yoga in the cemetery. I definitely enjoy doing that. If you are more fitness oriented, maybe go for a jog through the cemetery. Maybe spend some time meditating in the cemetery. Get to know the lay of the land. You definitely do want to get to know the cemetery that you do your work in like the back of your hand, right? You want to be able to find your way in, find your way out. You want to be able to locate what it is you're looking for when you're looking for it. So you come in for a work that you're going to do, you want to be able to know ahead of time where you're going to go to do it, any alternative locations that you are going to do the work at should it be too conspicuous for you to do it at your primary location. You are going to want to know where it is in the cemetery you can get some of the stuff that you might need on that front. Also, do some research about some of the more notable people who are in the cemetery. For example, you might find that some of the people buried in the cemetery have the same names as some of the streets in the town that you're in. They might have the same name as some of the major businesses that are prominent in the town that you are in. You might find that there are monuments in your city that are erected to important historical figures, and you might find that their headstones are also in this city. So get to know that intimate connection between the people who are buried here, the stuff that people use to remember them, some of the symbols that are carved or etched into the stone. Get to know that. Knowledge is power too, remember that. So keep that in mind as you enter to do the working and as you continue on to find some optimal spots to set up shop, so to speak. Additionally, keep a lookout for some structures or some headstones that can serve multiple purposes. So as you are getting to know your cemetery, as you are getting to know the place of power, hopefully this is a place where your ancestors are buried, so you go there frequently, to remember them and to honor them and to draw up strength from them. But think about, maybe you come across an arch. Oh, it's a bee! You come across an arch. Consider what an arch might be useful for in magic. Maybe you want to enchant the stone, smoke it out with some incense, get some holy water on it, and you want to use that to help with some rituals of renewal, or you want to use that as a kind of gate between this world and another world, and you want to empower it in that place. What would you use an arch for? Or specifically, an arch that is in a cemetery. Get critical, get creative, get empowered. As you can see, I am at the final resting place of Millard Fillmore, who was the 13th President of the United States of America. As a witch, as a priest, as someone who works, inside the tradition of conjure, and as someone who is also a social justice warrior, I am extremely fortunate to live so close to the grave of a United States president. As I was saying, it is extremely important to know a little bit about the person that you are going to be trafficking with when you do your work. So some traditions believe that the way a person is when they die is who they will be when they pass away, unless they have received some work done by those that they have left behind. So, for example, some traditions believe that when you do certain kinds of work towards your deceased relatives, you can work to elevate them. You can work to help get them enlightenment. You can work to help them attract a spirit guide that will help them while they are in the spirit world, who can give them more access to power, who can lift them up higher towards the light of God. And that helps them become a more tempered spirit. That helps them become a little bit more useful to the living, and it helps them engage in their duties to the living a little bit more willingly and a little bit more holistically and a little bit more honestly. So there's the belief that, spirits still maintain a personality or some form or semblance of an ego when they cross over. Other traditions believe that when a person passes away, they get a glimpse of their life and they get a glimpse of the greater picture, and that is what triggers some enlightenment in them. And it makes them safer to work with. It gives them a bigger perspective. So they're no longer looking at humanity and what it means to be alive in the physical and the way that they did when they were alive. And so this does go for working with ancestors as well. So this is something to think about if you are estranged from your ancestors, if your ancestors didn't like what you were doing while you were in the living. Maybe they weren't a fan of your religion. Maybe they weren't a fan of your queer identity. Maybe they weren't a fan of your partner, the way that you chose to raise your kids. Or for whatever reason, you and some ancestors or a particular ancestor had some kind of a tumultuous relationship while they were alive. Consider what you might think about them now that they're passed away. If you believe that they still harbor those human resentments, then that's your cue to start engaging in rituals and offerings that are meant to help get them enlightened. You might dedicate a rosary to them. You might dedicate a specific holiday to visiting them. You might call them out on your ancestor altar at home and start making offerings to them and lifting them up towards the light of God so that they become a little bit more tempered. And there are offerings that you can make to them to bring them along to your side and to help them see the value and the strength that comes with your own brand of diversity. If you are the kind of person who believes that upon passing over, they become more enlightened, they get a bigger picture view, then you start working with them, making them offerings, and start drawing their attention to you so that you can work with them and so you can get access to that insight and to that enlightenment. All of this starts happening before you seek to hire a spirit and before you seek to, take anything or, request anything from them. So getting to know them, if they are not your direct ancestor, I definitely recommend choosing a public figure and, starting to get to know what they were known for in the living. It's a lot easier to do that with a public figure than it is a random obscure name that is somewhere in the cemetery. We can read about Millard Fillmore. We can read about Lucille Ball. We can read about Tom Sawyer. And we can, learn about what this dude's politics were, right? We can maybe find out that he was a Republican or a conservative, 13th president of the United States. What was going on in 1874 when he died? What was going on during his pregnancy? What are some of the legislation that he vetoed? What are some of the legislation that he very quickly signed into action? 13 is pretty early on in the grand scheme of the presidency. So what did he stand for? as an African American worker, as an African American witch, and as a social justice person, I would immediately start making offerings to get him enlightened, to kind of remove some of that racism that is inherent in white people from around that time, to start to, make sure that the working that I'm doing doesn't have any repercussions. That's how I would immediately approach offerings of tobacco, offerings of rum, offerings of incense, offerings of coffee, offerings of rice, offerings of beans, offerings of flowers are all things that I would bring to this place. One of the other things that I think is super important that I want to draw your attention to is making offerings of ancestor money. So I have two different types here. Ancestor money is money that you give to your ancestors. It's a spiritual concept, and one of the other names that you can find ancestor money under are called hell notes. So depending on the tradition that you're going with, or depending on what you come across first and what vibes with you, you can find some ancestor money that looks like this. You can find some ancestor money that looks like this. And so one of the ways that you can use this money is you can write your petition, write a prayer for Thanksgiving, or what have you, write it on the back of this, set it on fire, and you can burn it at your ancestor altar. You can burn it at the headstone of, or the tombstone of the ancestor that you plan on working with, as a way of kind of jump-starting the payment of what you're asking for. Burn one of these off. Consider that it gives them energy to do what it is that you're asking. It's kind of like an incentive, so incentivizing your request. But we're definitely burning ancestor money, for our ancestors who are directly related to us, who are our spiritual ancestors, and then also to any elevated ancestors that we are working with. And so whether we like it or not, here in the United States, the legacy of the presidents, they represent elevated ancestors. They are known for some remarkable things that they've done during life, and in death we still know their names, we still know what they stand for, and so we can invoke that power for our work. If you are just making a general offering, I recommend an offering of incense, maybe a few tea light candles. You can put those in a jar, close the lid up, and punch some holes in it with a screwdriver and a hammer. Then put the lid back on. That way you can make sure that your tea light is safe from the elements, the wind blowing, so on, and it can stay lit when you leave. You can do flags, would be appropriate for this particular spirit. An incense that smelled good but might not necessarily be charged in any way, shape, or form for any particular reason. Just some, this smells nice, I find it pleasing, so I'm definitely making sure that, I'm not offering the spirit anything that I find fuddy-duddy. So if I don't like it, I'm not using it as an offering. If you were doing workings for money, I definitely recommend incense that have a money theme. So silver rain, which is this one, rain that coin down. Silver and gold incense, gold rain incense. If you are leaving some coins, you can smoke the coins and come to me. Leave the coins at the grave, leave the incense at the grave. That's an example of a real quick, spirit working in the cemetery that you can do. If your life is difficult and you want the presidential power to kind of make that life a little bit easy for you, you can use some easy life incense, special favor incense. and you can combine that with some parchment paper and write a petition on there. For social justice work, however, I recommend court case incense. Now, this might also be beneficial if you have access to the grave of a Supreme Court justice or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. You have access to their final resting place. You can go there with some court case incense in a blue candle. And you can anoint that candle with some, court case oil, special favor oil. You can even inscribe that candle with your petition and leave the candle and the stick of incense at their grave, let it burn. Write the candle on a glass encased, write the petition on a glass encased candle and, let that burn. Put the incense, off to the side a little bit, let that burn, and that can be, your petition and you're working at that particular place of power. One of the things that I definitely recommend is making offerings of water to your spirit. Cold water cools down spirits that might be a little bit more hot-tempered or hot-headed. You can use bottled water, or you can bring some special water that you've already blessed and have, an intention spoken into it, praying over your water. I pray that this water uplifts the spirit closer to the light of God, to the light of the divinity. I pray that this water provides clarity in terms of truth, clarity in terms of righteousness and justice, clarity in terms of freedom for everyone. And speak that over your water and make that as an offering. One of the reasons why I do recommend pouring the whole bottle or the whole jar out is because now this becomes a receptacle for the graveyard dirt that you do collect. Put it back in there, carry in, carry out, so you're not adding any litter or any non-essential, sediments here to this place. You're leaving it as undisturbed as possible. Why would you collect graveyard dirt? Great question. Graveyard dirt can be used in many different kinds of workings. They can be used in love spells, money spells, court case spells, justice spells, prosperity, abundance, protection. You name it, you can use graveyard dirt as an ingredient. You can also use it for some ill will kind of things if you know you know. The cemetery is a place where you can come to, put to rest some qualities that maybe you want to be rid of your body, and then you can also use it to harm others if you know you know. The process for harvesting graveyard dirt. 1, you want to have an item to dig with, a spoon, an athame, a garden trowel. Any of those things works. You smoke that thing in your special incense to kind of sanctify. You hit it with some holy water that you've made under the full moon or that you've gathered from your churches or what have you. Hit that thing with your holy water, make it sanctified. You come up to your spirit. You make your offerings first. Maybe you make an offering of some coffee. You maybe take a handful of coffee that's already ground and you sprinkle it onto, the spot. You make your offering of some rum. Maybe you pour the rum, or you pour the vodka, or you pour the tequila based on, if the spirit is known for a specific kind of liquor, by all means use that. But you make your offering of liquor to the spirit. You pour it out. Pour it on the dirt around the grave. Don't necessarily pour anything onto the actual tombstone. The only exception I say might be water, but even then, it's not necessary. Pour it around the tombstone, pour it around the headstone. You don't necessarily have to put it directly on here. But make your offerings, say your prayers to your ancestors, say your prayer to the spirit that you are trying to work with. If it's in your repertoire, cast a circle to contain any of the energies that you are raising. If you are not particularly good at listening for or feeling for or sensing the message of spirit in your body, you can always flip a coin 3 times. Get all 3 heads, that's a yes. Get all 3 tails, that's a no. Get 2 heads and a tail, that's a yes, but pay attention, move cautiously, move intentionally. Get 2 tails and a head. The answer is no for right now, come back at a better time, or something like that. You can also use your pendulum, and however your pendulum is calibrated, counterclockwise for no, clockwise for yes, and you spin that, let that thing spin while you're here, and let that be, a more tangible determinant about whether or not you are meant to proceed. Once you make your offering, once you say your prayers, sit in meditation for a second. Take a look around you for any signs or omens that might be present. So bees might be a thing. Cardinals might be a thing. Blue jays might be a thing. Turkey vultures might be a thing. Hawks, falcons might be a thing. Just take a look at the way that any nature spirits are trying to communicate with you while you're doing this work. If you notice any kinds of feelings in your body, if you notice yourself start to get anxious, pack it up. If you notice yourself start to get nauseous, pack it up. If you notice that all of a sudden you have to go to the bathroom and excrete really intensely, pack it up. Come back another time. And that's in absence of flipping your coin, using your pendulum, doing any of the dowsing or stuff like that. Once you get your yes, you go ahead with the tool that you're going to use to dig. You want to dig in the dirt in a large circular pattern and lift up some of the uppermost grass and some of the uppermost layer, and move that to the side. Once you do that, there's like a little bit of a hole there. You dig out from that hole, and you dig until you hear or you feel a stop sensation, right? Or if there's a number that comes to you, maybe the spirits of the ancestors are like, yes, 4. Then you get 4 scoops. That's all you. That's what you get. If they say 1, then you get 1 scoop. That's you. That's what you get. If they say 18, then you get 18 scoops. That's you. That's what you get. Put it in your receptacle, seal it up, put that off to the side. Remember, you have to pay for this as well. So the offerings get you access. The offerings get you into the good graces. You definitely want to make sure that you throw some coin in there. I like to put in, take a trip to the bank and get a 50-cent piece if you can find it. Get a golden dollar if you can find it. If you can't do that, throw in 3 or 9 pennies, 3 or 9 nickels, 3 or 9 dimes. But you definitely want to make sure that you are putting coin in there. Don't put any actual dollar bills in there. Definitely go with the coins. So here's a 50-cent piece. It's an example of something that I would use as something as a payment. Here's a golden dollar. It's an example of something that I would use as a payment. Put those in the hole where you remove the dirt from. If you are hiring the spirit to do something in particular for you, this is also the time to put in your petition. Your petition is written in either dove's blood or bat's blood ink. Dove's blood for the work of, good. Bat's blood for a little bit less savory work. If you know, you know. But you put You put your petition down on your parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, you use, rip off a piece of paper from a brown paper bag. You use it on that. You sign your name, and you put your thumbprint, you put your thumb into the dove's blood or the bat's blood ink, and you put the thumbprint down at the bottom of your petition. You roll it up, and you also put your petition in that hole with the coinage. And then you replace that piece of earth that you dug the circle out of. You replace it just like a puzzle piece. Boom, tamp it down just a little bit. That way the place looks as undisturbed as possible. And then, boom, that's the petition. That is the hiring process for hiring a spirit. You might also decide that you want to put a little bit of water around the area. You might also decide that you want to stick an incense around the area. You might also decide that you want to put, a jar with some sand and some tea light candles, in that area as well. And just place it on top of that. But eventually what will happen is the rain will happen, the natural movements of the earthworms and the creepy crawlers in there will reshift it, and that will become a solid piece of ground again. But definitely put it back, make it look as undisturbed as possible is the goal. Just also remember that just because you have come to remove some graveyard dirt and pray for some graveyard dirt doesn't mean you have to hire the spirit to do something for you. The graveyard dirt can, go back to your home, and you can put it on your ancestor altar. If it's the grave of a relative that's in your direct bloodline or your spiritual lineage, you can take that home and you can put it, on your ancestor altar right next to a picture of them. And you have that, more tangible kind of thing. You can put that in a spiritual powder. For example, if you want to grab on to a special opportunity, which is also something that I would come to Millard Fillmore for, right? He had one of the best opportunities in the land. He got to be the president of the United States. So if I wanted to maybe grab onto some opportunity, maybe I'll do an opportunity knocks kind of work, and I'll use his graveyard dirt in a powder or into a formula that includes some 5-finger grass to grab some opportunities. Maybe I'll add it to a crown of success oil, in which case I might also add some 5-finger grass, a few small pieces of iron pyrite, or I might add some lodestone to it to really kind of attract those things that I'm looking for. So graveyard dirt in and of itself is an ingredient in spells. If you know, you can put it in someone's shoe and engage in some foot track magic. That way you can sprinkle the graveyard dirt out in a path where someone's going to be walking, and you can use it to influence their way that way. You can really set someone up to have a really bad fucking day if you can manage to get it in their shoe, or if you can get it, if you can charge it and get them to walk through it. So you can use it in that kind of way. But also you can hire a spirit right here at their grave as well. So that's something to think about. That's something to take a look at. Once you are done, you say your concluding prayers to the spirit. You say some concluding prayers to your ancestors. You get up, you pack your stuff up and put it away. You're making sure that you are not leaving any litter. You are making sure that you are not leaving any trash, any garbage. You basically don't want anyone to know that you were there at all, realistically. Put your stuff away. I'd just leave an incense here while I'm at it, because I do frequent this particular headstone. And so leaving an incense right now will not be the worst thing to happen. see if I actually have a lighter on me. Might not be getting an incense if I don't have a lighter. Ah. Ta-da! So I do leave this incense to fortify my relationship with this spirit and the spirit of this land. May I be accepted fully. May I always be welcomed here. And as far as my relationship with the spirit goes, may there always be peace between us. Before I forget, other things that you can do, like in the case of Millard Fillmore, there are relatives that are buried around them. You can learn about the relatives if they are public enough, but you can also make offerings to the spirits that surround them as a way of gaining favor as well. So if their children are buried here, or if in the unfortunate event that, someone here has a child that has passed away, like they were just like a babe, you can leave little toys, little treats with birthday candles in them at the grave as well, to kind of gain the favor of the spirits that surround them and fortifying the relationship that way. Once you are ready to go, you take up your stuff, you put them away, you take up your circle if you have cast it as well, keeping in mind that the way that you enter a cemetery is just as important as the way that you leave. So there are some things that you want to make sure you do in order to make sure that, any lingering spirits in the cemetery don't hitchhike onto you. You want to make sure that some cemetery spirits aren't looking for a way out. They hop onto your aura, they hop onto you, they jump onto your back, is something that has been said in my household. They hop onto your back, hitchhike out, and they get past the gatekeeper because they're riding on you, and now they're out and free to do whatever it is they might be wanting to do. If you don't believe that that's a thing, perhaps it's not something that you have to worry about. However, it is important to make sure that your aura, your energy, and that your person is right when you are exiting the cemetery. So one of the things that you want to do after you dismiss your spirits, one of the things that you want to do, and one of the things that I have learned to do, one of the things that I was taught to do, take a candle, counterclockwise, rub it around your body from head to toe, energetically pull the stuff off of you, the back of you, pass it under your feet, underarms, overarms, pass it around you, and, visually, you are just visualizing any gunk that might be on you, any energy signatures that aren't the best for you. You're visualizing them attaching to the candle. You can, if you so choose, spray the candle with Florida water first. You definitely want to spray yourself with Florida water as a way of cleansing yourself as well. You say a prayer to your ancestors and your guides, most holy ancestors, guides, who are responsible for my well-being and my spiritual success. I call upon you to help in removing any attachments that may be on me as a result of this working. I call upon you to remove any attachments that might be onto me, that might be stuck to me, that might be clinging to me as a result of this working. I call upon you to cleanse me and sanctify me and make me right as a result of this working. visualize the candle just kind of pulling it off, sucking them off. Maybe you can visualize things getting stuck or caught into the wax. And last but not least, as you are exiting the cemetery, you want to find your way home in a different way than the way that you came. You can, if you drove, you can repeat the spinning around 3 times, right? So you can, go the opposite way from your house, make a left turn. Travel down that street, make another left turn. Travel down that street, make another left turn. Travel down that street, make another left turn. Then go down another block and just do 3 turns, and then find a way to your house, not touching any of or a significantly different number of roads than the ones that you took to get here. This could also mean exiting the cemetery from a different entrance or from a different place. And all of this is to make sure that a malevolent spirit doesn't follow you home and doesn't start to wreak havoc in your life or cause mischief. And then once you do get home, this candle that's pulled off all the gunk on you, that is, maybe got any malignant or less than, happy spirits attached to it, you go home and you just let that burn all the way down, and, just let the fire consume that energy so you have less to worry about. Of course, put the faith in your gods, your guides, and your ancestors to keep you safe and protected. And keep in mind that if your petition or your prayers made any promises to the spirits that you're working with, you get started on making good on your promises immediately. So that is it for now. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Millennial Magician Archives. I look forward to working with y'all again, and I look forward to the next episode.